I knocked on so many doors when I was making my first film that I realized that they are not doors, they are walls. If you're putting in X amount of money and I'm making it 5x, 4x through the film, how does it matter whether it's a class film or a mass film? The reason why the Kannadigas are going and watching a Malayalam film is because we are not feeding them good films. I'm making a Kannada film, why should I be scared of?
Hello Hemanth, welcome to The Hindu.
My pleasure.
So a couple of days, I think a week back, you put a very emotional note announcing the beginning of Dakshayani Talkies, but suddenly I remembered that there's also Lost and Found film. So can you explain the roles of these two production houses?
So Lost and Found, I started actually to produce my first film with the intention of starting a production house. I have never had the idea of starting a production house. I started because I knocked on so many doors when I was making my first film that I realized that they are not doors, they are walls. Yeah. So it got to a point where I was like, if I have to make my first film, I have to somehow find a way to invest myself. So using, friends, family, and typical middle class kid. So finding that kind of investment was a little challenging. So the idea was to start Lost and Found Films then. And in fact, the interesting thing about the name Lost and Found, initially my idea for the thing was called No Bucket Productions. Because that whole idea of, sucking up to people is something that I had seen all through the industry back then. It still exists to a large degree, but I felt when you're starting something new, starting with that kind of energy, which is not very positive, which is almost coming from a place of anger and frustration, is not the right way. So Lost and Found was because I started a film, it got shelved. So then I went back to the drawing board and made another film. That's how Lost and Found started. And made Godi Banna, and Humble and Bhimasena, and so. But Dakshayani Talkies is a slightly more, it comes under the blanket of Lost and Found will come under the blanket of Dakshayani Talkies. But going forward, it will be Dakshayani Talkies. Right.
And Lost and Found?
I probably will not be continuing Lost and Found. It's almost like a rebranding of sorts. Yeah.
So you said there were only walls and there were no doors. Right? So the thing is, can you summarize that experience? Like if I were to talk about, like, you meet a producer and you were disappointed that maybe he has a preconceived notion about how a movie should be or so, something like that. Because that is where the first time you would have felt that a newcomer or a youngster with a potential should get a producer with an open mind or something like that. So can you summarize that experience? What exactly troubled you?
See, what troubled me is that nobody was ready to read my story or listen to the script. It was more to do with who is there in the film and how bankable the film is, without actually measuring if I were to compare it to a restaurant, it's like judging how nice the restaurant is without tasting the food. Right? It felt like I'm only requesting them to allow me to serve them, what I have prepared. That patience also a lot of people didn't have, because they would be very dismissive of the fact that, okay, this film doesn't have these many fights, it doesn't have these many songs.
And roughly when was this?
This was 2006 onwards. Right after Prithvi, I decided to go independent. I realized I have assisted on enough number of films. Technically, I have learned as much as I can on a film set. The next phase of my learning has to be where I make mistakes and then learn from it. And I realized I am ready to direct. And it's that very weird feeling where only you know if you're ready. I'm sure people around me might have thought maybe he's not ready. That often happens. When I see my assistant saying that they want to direct, I feel I come from a place of concern where I'm like, maybe you're not ready, but only they will know
that they're ready
if they're ready or not. So for me, I believed I was ready, but it took me almost 8-9 years to actually, finally get to make that first film. So in that 8-9 years, it was just rejection on rejection and rejection, and it was very frustrating because for me, I was not being rejected for not writing poorly or not articulating and putting together a good narrative. It was mostly intangible reasons which I couldn't understand. And that sort of made me realize that maybe I'm in a round peg in a square hole, and I need to figure out a way to either alter the size of that, square hole, or find another alternative. So, which is why I moved away and went to Bombay. I looked for opportunities there. I had started doing short films. So I spent the time getting better in terms of knowing my job and getting better from educating myself. And that really helped because Bombay opened up a few doors. I got to work with Sriram. So I was about to actually pack my bags and move there. But it just so happened, and I'm grateful that the back home things worked out.
And so with Dakshayani, what exactly, if you were to say the agenda is as far as producing is concerned?
In a very weird way, it's almost like, I know there are many people like me. When I was that kid with a script, with thinking that I have a great idea and willing to work hard and learn and hustle. I wished there was somebody who would produce films for my kind. So my intention for Dakshayani is to produce films that I resonate with. To produce films that I subscribe to myself, that as an audience that I want to watch in theaters. And we have a rich history of storytelling in Kannada. It is not always about, see, terms like mass, class and all, these are all very terms that the press lends to the film. Any film that makes money. For me, Godibana is a mass film because it made like 10x of the investment. So for me, there is nothing more mass than it because the film is commercially hit. Right? Here, somehow films, when they do break through, they are not taken seriously. And I have experienced that myself. It's like class film,
Only if it's done like a break even or something like that, or a little bit of a profit.
No, it was not. My thing is, see, I keep, like, I have had this conversation with multiple producers, who come from slightly old school perspective. And if you're putting in X amount of money and I'm making it 5x, 4x through the film, how does it matter whether it's a class film or a mass film? If you're interested in money, then you want to know. How does it matter if you're selling bhaji or masal puri or dosa? Figure out what the audience wants, right? And fill in the gap. So that is the idea. And for me, I look at Dakshayani as a huge opportunity for storytelling. I believe that every story has an audience. It could be a very artsy film, it could be a very complicated, psychological film, or it could be a total massy film. The trick is to figure out what budget to make that film in and how to make that film. So I think that is what I'm trying to sort of lend my experience of my understanding of why films have worked, why my individual films have worked and done well at the box office. So I'm trying to see how I can replicate that model.
Two things I'm picking up from that answer is, you said that every story has an audience. I remember when Godi Banna came, there was, I think, U-Turn, Karwa, and as well as...
No, it was Titi, Karwa, U-Turn, and then
so
four weeks were big hits.
Big hits. But then, like you said, now there's a clear distinction saying that this is a mass film, this is a class film. They even go to saying that, this is very fast-paced, slow paced. So we are not witnessing that scenario where like a Godi Banna kind of a film will get its audience in the first 3-4 weeks. Is that true? Like, we are not witnessing that?
No, I think I disagree with that because there are a lot of films which, like, if you look at last year's cinema, last few years, couple of years, there are films where they have shown that if you make a film with the right amount of sincerity and honesty, the audience is actually ready to go watch it. When I watch all kinds of films because I'm a cinephile. I like watching cinema. So when I watch a Malayalam film, I see half the audience is Kannadigas. The reason why the Kannadigas are going and watching a Malayalam film is because we are not feeding them good films. If we make good films, I'm sure they will, they will show up in huge numbers. When Manjumal Boys can do 100 days in Tumkur, it is not that there is suddenly a huge set of people who are taking a bus from Kerala to watch the film. The local population is only watching it. So we have to figure out what is it that we are not doing right to cater to that audience. And, I think, there is a method to that madness. Nobody knows it, but we are all in the pursuit of figuring it out. I believe that always good process is important. Result is not in our hands.
Right.
If you have a good process, then the same process can become more efficient with time.
Right. And when you say that films that resonate with you, so let's start with Agnyathavasi. What is it that made you feel that this is my kind of movie?
No, for me, when the script came to me, I'm a very big fan of Gultu, Jana's first film.
Yeah.
I in fact met Jana coincidentally. I was looking at, when I was casting for Godivanna, there were multiple short films that I was looking at, because you get a lot of great, interesting new actors in these short films, right? And it works out for me also because they are hungry. They'll work really hard. So I found Jana's short film with Naveen acting in it, and that short film was fabulous. And Naveen recites a dialogue of Babruana in that. And it's like superb the way he does it. So I was like, and it's beautifully shot and edited and everything. So I was like, who's I messaged him. So we started talking and we stayed friends. So after Godivanna, he made Gultu. So a lot of things that I had learned during Godivanna about release, I'd learned from Anup during Rangitaranga. So, and then I was like, I'd spoken to Anup, and Anup was very sweet enough to say, release it here, talk to these people.
You mean the distribution? And
like the community building perspective, right? He was there for me when I needed it. I could pick up the phone. So similarly, I was there for Jana and so on. And the idea is to create that cyclical effect, right? So I met Jana like that. And during COVID, though, after Gultu, he hadn't done anything. I think he had tried to produce a film. He had written a film. So he sent me the script and he said, what do you think of this? I read the script because I had a lot of time and I really liked the script because it had that very, like a nice, what do you say? When like in the media, I'm sure when there's a good murder story, right? All of us want to know who did it, how did it happen, know? But it had that nice cinematic sort of a thing to it, and it happens in that Mandlad region. In one village, there's one murder and all that. So that's a genre that I really love. So I was like, okay, this is where I will produce this. I did not have money. I did not know how to figure it out. But I was like, we'll make this film somehow. So I decided I'm going to make it and then started working towards making it. And that's how.
So if I'm not wrong, it started in 2022. But now it's 2025. Can you explain like what happens? Like is 3 years a bit of a long time? Or?
No, it is massively long. We were actually ready with the film. The only reason why I delayed the release or sort of hit the brakes in terms of the completion of the film with regard to the technical departments was the market was so not conducive for cinema. Like, see, I am investing money from money that I have made from films. Right? I cannot afford to lose this. It's like I will lose everything and go back, empty-handed. So it is about also a couple of investors who have shown faith in me. It's about making sure that at least the least I can do is make good on the money. So the market was so bad in terms of acquisitions. There was nobody who's ready to come forward and buy films and sort of pay value for the quality that you're bringing. So we have Charan who's doing music. We have Advait who's done cinematography. So when you're bringing that kind of technical craft into the film, the kind of offers that were floated was so low that I was like, I'll wait it out till the market changes a little bit, and that doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. So we are trying to do.
The market in that kind of situation? Is it because post-COVID?
It's a course correction of sorts. The buying patterns have completely changed. The OTT platforms are very, very selective of which films they pick up. It's very popular knowledge that big films are not being picked up, right? So not just in Kannada, in all other languages also. So the course correction is happening because during COVID there was a lot of flooding into the market with monies because they were entering the market. Now that they have entered the market, they've got subscription. Now they're trying to see which film strategically works. Only those films will buy. So that's from their perspective they're right, but from our perspective, if it is not meeting a certain value, then the whole point of making a film itself is lost.
Right. Yeah.
And slowly, I think it is realizing that, Kannada cinema, if people want to watch, they have to come to theatres to watch it. Yeah. We have to make sure that we have made a good enough film for them to watch that film and feel like, okay, we can also say, we saw a good Kannada film, why don't you watch it? Yeah. Because the narrative right now is, this Malayalam film is great, this Tamil film is great, this Telugu film is there. Yeah. So I feel irritated as a Kannada filmmaker that we are also good enough. We will make films that people can turn around and look. We have done that in the past. So it's not,
And you said that you didn't have money, but you wanted to make this movie. Now, tell me something like, if it's a big, we use these terms very loosely, right? Like if there's an established star, it's a big film. If there's maybe a character artist, it's a small film. So what is the size of Agnyathavasi? Like how big or small or medium is this?
No, I've always believed, and there are many films in the history of cinema to back my point, that the strength and the weight of an idea cannot be defined by the bank balance supporting that idea. Idea is always powerful. A very small idea can change and cause a revolution. Like if you take the looks of Kantara is not a very high budget film. Right? And I'm not just talking about that. If you take, like if you look at Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, they were all micro budget films, but they grossed like, 700x, 800x of their initial budget. So it's that, wow, that idea is so cool, right? So it can become anything, but that is a very, idealistic way of looking at it. Right. Practically speaking, as a producer, I know that Agnyathavasi is not a event film, but it is certainly a genre film which can hold its own. So it is a theatrical film where people can go to the theaters, have a theatrical experience. So that I'm very sure of. So depends on how the audience then, take it to the next level.
And also talking about the size of the movie, the risk factor involved, is it lesser if it is like a small budget film compared to something that's mounted?
No, not necessarily, because the only difference is that, when you have a big star entering the film, your initial opening crowd, the pull is very, very alluring for any investor. If I'm doing a film with an A-list actor, I know opening weekend I will get numbers which will sort of justify that budget and that sort of lavishness. So in a way that you always in the back of the mind know that there will be a seller, there will be a buyer. For the film. So that might not be the case with a character actor, with a great actor, and but the slowly the market is sort of weirdly changing, where even on OTT, a direct to OTT film, like which is a remake of a Tamil Malayalam film, like Great Indian Kitchen into Mrs. has now blown up so much.
It's exploded.
So it got rejected everywhere, and then it got made. So there is it's a very interesting market in that sense, where you don't know exactly which one is going to blow. Nobody expected Maharaja and Tamil to do so well.
Exactly.
And it's actually a sort of
how do you say, like a content.
Correct.
It's not an event film.
It's not an event film, but the largeness of the idea, the feeling that you get in the theater, justified that, so you have to believe that your film has that, or at least you have to work towards, sort of creating that.
See, you said about the largeness of the idea, right? So, with Dakshayani Talkies, obviously, there's an urge to produce and support very interesting ideas. But then, how do you ensure that the idea is translated exactly how it was pitched on screen? And we have seen production houses trying to do that, but then, it is a challenge.
No, I'll be very frank with you. That is something that even I am learning, because I have to be the kind of a producer which, as a director myself, as a filmmaker myself, I don't want ever to be a producer who, if let's say, imagine if the roles were reversed, I am the director. I don't want the producer to be a certain way. right?
Okay.
Like who will come and say, take this actor, or
Like micromanaging.
I don't want the producer to ever do that. So I don't want to ever be that kind of a producer.
Right.
So at the same time, I have to sort of know, okay, from my experience, I know these things. I know this is a red flag.
Yeah.
I have to find a way to articulate my concerns, my insecurities to the director. And it's about finding a way to co-own the film with the director.
Can you then give me an example, like how did you convey to Janardhan Chikkanam that maybe this is an area of concern, and how can we solve it?
So I'm very open. I'm very direct and very blunt.
Okay.
So because there are no emotions involved in this, I'm not trying to hurt his feelings, right? I'm trying to tell him that this is what I felt while watching the film.
Yeah.
So there, at the script level, because I'm a producer who looks at the script first, right? I very clearly tell my concerns in the script. This is this thing, I had a lack of clarity.
Right.
What is it? Like I tried and ask questions so that the writer/director gets an opportunity to, explain it to me rather than me jumping the gun and sort of assuming that, okay, this is what it is. So I try and ask questions and try to be as fair as possible. Again, trying to mirror what I would expect if I was the writer.
Yeah.
So I do that, and in that process was a very healthy, nice things, and in fact, some couple of new things emerged as an idea. And credit to Jana, he's also a very, very open. He's not very. Oh, I've written this. It's my way or the highway. If that was the case, then I wouldn't be working with such people, because it has to be collaborative in nature. So there were instances in the script which I pointed out, and he was, but I also ensure that I have to give them that space to go and make that film.
Yeah.
Not go visit the set. So I didn't go to shoot.
Right.
I didn't even check the footage.
Okay.
I was like curiously like, how's the shoot going? How's the shoot going? But it's like allowing your insecurity to take a backseat to allow other people to go out and make the film.
Right. And does the feedback also involve something like, say, hey, this might not work with the audience? Like, are you also already looking at that thing?
So I will always look at it from within the story. Does it work for the story?
Okay.
If the character in the film is not doing something that is organic to the story, the audience is going to obviously look at it and be like, why is this character doing this?
Yeah.
So it has to make sense within the framework of the story. There will be some points where I can foresee that the audience is going to disconnect, or the audience might not accept it. But I never phrase my questions or my feedback with audience ki idishta.
Yeah.
The trick is, we are not here to figure out what the audience wants.
Right.
The moment you think the audience knows, and I'm making a film, you're not surprising the audience.
Correct.
Right? You're not. It's a
You're
dance.
giving exactly what they
have been eating. Yeah. So there is a chance that they'll reject it, which is why you have 250 films, 220 films don't work, because 220 films are trying to follow something that was in trend 6 months ago.
Yeah.
The thing is, when you're making a film, it's like catching magic dust, right? What is working today is already out of fashion 1 year ago, 1 year later. Right. So the film that you're going to start making today, because this film was a hit,
correct,
by the time it comes out, it's already old news. So a lot of studios, big studios, the moment a bunch of horror comedies started becoming popular, the bunch of studios now, they're trying to make sequels of horror comedies.
Exactly.
But in 1 year's time, those films will be obsolete.
Correct.
So it's about trying to stay ahead of the curve. Right. That is the idea.
Yeah.
Not everybody will get it right. That's the whole reason why there's no formula.
There's no formula. Yeah. And also, talking about the casting, when we saw that Rangana Raghu sir is the hero, I mean, now he's already played in Shakahari, but that was the first time we actually thought that like a character artist or a comedian can be a
correct.
hero.
Agnyathavasi was in fact the
exactly
first,
yeah. But we've already seen that in other languages. Like if you spoke about Great Indian Kitchen, and Suraj Venjaramudu was a comedian first, like, and then he started doing these, So can you talk about that development itself as to how important was that to kind of bring him as the central part of the movie?
See, I look at actors like how actors look at themselves. They are vessels, right? You have to try and get the best out of them.
Yeah.
right? The only way to test and challenge them is through a great script or a good story or a great scene or a great line. So only when the actor sort of is challenged that way. And when I see Raghu sir, even when the writing in a certain scene, without taking names obviously, because I don't want to be disrespectful, even in a scene which maybe there is not much for him, he will still kill it. Right? He's so good. His timing, the way, and small things like the way he looks, the irritation that he shows on his face, improves the writing so much. But imagine the same actor with better material.
Correct.
Right? And these are actors that we should celebrate. Because it's not easy to do what actors like him, it's almost like we take him for granted. And so when the opportunity arose, Jana had previously worked with Raghu sir in Gultu.
Yes.
So they had a working relationship.
He played a minister.
And even in that he was very slick. And I loved the way he presented Raghu sir in that. So I was very keen to see how this inspector character will be played, and it was very, very fascinating for me.
Nice, lovely. So just coming to the release of the movie, and I want to know how you're thinking as a producer. So I think it was Karan Johar who said that the movie has to reach everybody, like A, B, and C, and it shouldn't run only in multiplexes or something like that. Does that apply to your movie?
No, I have to be realistic in terms. I would obviously, as a producer, would want the film to reach everywhere, but I cannot start that. I cannot think that is going to be the first way to go about it. Like even with Godivanna, when we were discussing the release of the film, we did it very strategically in the sense that, okay, we want to target this center and then grow from there. Hopefully the film sort of becomes bigger and bigger from there. So we are targeting those key areas where films like this have done well before, and we're trying to strategize that way.
And also just to look at the practical challenge of it, like before the interview I was talking to you about the date itself, right? You're releasing on April 11th. I think April 10th there's Vidyapati, Nagbhushan's film, and then obviously there's Ajit's Good Bad Ugly, and I think Prabhas's The Raja Saab is also planned.
No, I think that got
pushed. Okay. And I think there's a Sunny Deol movie called Jat that's coming. Correct. And then in Malayalam, there's something called Alappuzha Gymkhana. The guy who made Thallumal.
Thallumal.
And I'm pretty sure, I think there's Idli Kadai also.
Idli Kadai, Dhanush.
So this looks extremely packed. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, my thing is, I'm making a Kannada film. Why should I be scared of, Ajit? Ajit has no, say in what a Kannada film does here. I will say that with a lot of pride. I might come back, it might come back to bite me tomorrow. But the moment I move away from the field and give that space away, there is no resistance. Like there is no pride in what we do and the stories that we are trying to say. It is a good date for Kannada cinema. There are 2-3 good Kannada cinemas releasing on that day. And only because there are multiple holidays. So why not? I mean, for me, the biggest thing that I really loved in almost like I've mentioned this in other interviews also, when, when Hostel Ludogru was coming out, they did I think they clashed with Oppenheimer.
And Barbie.
Or Barbie.
Both.
I think, if I'm not mistaken. But they took it on and they were like, they made a video about it, saying that we are clashing with them, So that, it might be perceived to be a David versus Goliath story, but you have to back yourself. You have to back yourself that you have done something with a lot of pride. So yeah,
it's a fantastic answer.
I don't know. Let's see.
And also, just to talk about the slew of releases, right? It's been like almost 10 years that we have been facing this problem of a chock-a-block of releases in Kannada itself, like leave alone the other language movies. Like say, obviously, when it comes to March, April, there's a little bit of a concern that it's an exam season. Then what happens is IPL comes into play, elections are there, and then everything gets, like they wait for it. And then when there's a window, a lot of films come together. So how do you see this problem? Like we as critics, sometimes we're shocked that there are like
12, 15 films.
Which one to pick type. What do you have to say about this?
No, I think there is no There is no, like when you look at it from a calendar perspective, right? It is, you will invariably end up coming and clashing with, in fact, for I knew Vidyapati was coming because I know Dhananjay. I called him, I had a conversation with him. I told him, I am also thinking of this date.
Right.
Are you okay with it? So we had a brief conversation, but he's also coming from a place where he is like, okay, if I say no, where will you go? You will clash with somebody else again, no? So we were like, okay, because it is two different genres. That's a comedy, this is a thriller. So I believe that there is enough audience for us to capture, both of us can do well. So, and I hope that happens.
Yeah. And so amidst this promotions for Agnyathavasi, you put out a very angry, statement saying that Bhairavana Konepata is still on. What exactly is happening? Because it is
not angry at all.
Because it is a challenge that you cannot avoid, right? It is a health situation, and he's back now. Such a really a positive scenario. Like we were seeing him joining the sets for look tests and all that. So how do you plan when such kind of there's a detour in plan, right? When such a thing happens. So what do you do?
No, for me it actually was last year was very disruptive in that sense. But because after Sapta, I had this idea and I really was consumed by it. And I really wanted to start shooting. In fact, we had started building miniatures and we had started scouting, and there's a huge piece of land that we had seen. We were going to build a set, and we found out then. And the unfortunate thing was we had done the photo shoot.
Correct.
The reaction for it was so good. And the casting is also very interesting. We are trying to get actors from all over and make it, like a true blue Indian film. So, but we realized once we got the news that the most important thing is the priority should be his health. And so we had to pause completely. And that was disruptive in the sense that because there are also other opportunities that were coming up and all that. But for me, working with Shivanna on that film is something that is very dear for me. So, and the few, like I said in that note, what I got to see with him, it's a very rare thing in cinema. You see actors, he doesn't know anything else apart from living and working for the audience. It's like that I have to go work because people will have to watch films. It's so basic, like fundamentally basic in his core that he is there to entertain.
Right.
That's very rare to find, right? So, and that is something that we should celebrate. So I'm very eager to get back, but it was disruptive. So I've tried to keep myself busy with working on another film. Let's see if BKP is taking a little time, and we are willing to give all that time. I might do another film. I don't know. Let's see.
Before getting onto that.
Yeah.
And that's what you meant when you said you were getting offers.
There was a lot of talk and all that because Sapta had done really well. Correct. And there was a lot of interest from other languages and everything.
Right.
But I'm trying to see how I can do a film here, mounted here.
Right. Lovely. And lastly, when you say this was basically from a first-time producer, right? Bhairavana Konepata.
Godibanna was also...
exactly.
See, the thing with Godibanna is when I worked with Pushkar, we were co-producers. He did the major investment, but he did not know anything about the film business in the sense of how many, what is a camera, how much does it rent, what is the rental cost, what is the shift, where does the money leak?
Right.
It's very common practice that money leaks a lot, if you don't plan properly. So because salaries are not paid well, people find other ways to make money, and you have to find a way to make these things work. So I practically produced the film in a very typical Hollywood sense.
Correct.
Where you execute and make sure that all the decisions that you're taking is working within the budget, the negotiation with the actors, making sure this actor is committed for this number of days, planning of the shoot and all that. So that way, I have sort of done that in each film. Even with Sapta, Rakshit is not a very hands-on. He just trusts me to know how to make the film the way I want it, in the budget, within that budget. So I'd done that with Kavludari also, where when I commit to the producer saying I will do the film within this budget, the film will get done within that budget.
Yeah.
So that way I've sort of, been that producer in that sense. So this is, I have, for the other films like Bhima Sena, Humble, I was just an investor.
Correct. You're part of a...
Yeah, I was just an investor. In fact, Pushkar did all the production there because he had, learned the way to do it. And it's not rocket science, right? It's so he had he was taking the lead, and I stepped back and I just invested in that. So this film is more hands-on in that sense.
Right. Lovely. So may all that experience help you,
Thank you.
in Dakshayani. So can you tell me, so I read a line somewhere that it's a unique murder mystery about Agnyathavasi. What is the USP of this movie, if you were to tell?
I think the screenplay is the USP of the film. Very much like how I wouldn't compare it to any other film, but the way the story unfolds is very interesting. The characters, it's a very it's a story that you constantly are like, okay, so this and this and this, okay. It is a film that will make you think and make you feel, which is a very beautiful combination.
Great. So all the best for Agnyathavasi, and let us know more about your next project.
Yes. There are actually, in closing, because it's a chance for me to plug in I'm talking about it. There are other films and scripts that we are looking at to produce. So we're planning to do something interesting. Hopefully there will be. And also the thing that I'm trying to do, as I want Dakshayani Talkies to be a brand that is associated with storytelling, good storytelling, and sort of own that space. So what we are doing, in fact, as a part of the marketing lineup is I've produced a couple of short films with young filmmakers with whom I've seen a lot of promise. So I'm planning to release a couple of those short films in the lead up to the release. It's almost like watch this film in YouTube in the comfort of your home, but come to the theatre for Agnyathavasi. That is the idea.
Yeah, great. All the best for that, and thank you so much for talking.
My pleasure.